Welcome to the Independent Artist Podcast, sponsored by the National Association of Independent Artists.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. I'm Will Armstrong, and I'm a mixed media artist.
I'm Douglas Sigworth, glassblower. Join our conversations with professional working artists.
Let's jump right into the podcast. Douglas is sitting here with me, folks, and we are ready to go. It's been a little minute because our boy has been on the road. Welcome back from the highway, my friend.
Hey, 23 nights in hotels. That shit gets expensive, man.
That's crazy. You guys go hotel all the way then? It's never the Airbnb, so never the kitchen and all that?
We have done that, and we do like that. I guess it always comes down to figuring out where we get the best deals and that sort of thing.
Where do you get your best deals? We've never talked about that. How do you guys go about getting your hotels?
Here's how I get my best deal. Whenever I get an email, one of those mass emails that say, hey, would you like an attendees list or list for hotels? I click on those links and then I get spammed to death. That's how I find my hotels.
Have you noticed those guys have been getting a lot more aggressive lately? Yeah. I actually got a phone call from them. Well, it's my own fault because I think it's funny to be like...
you like to mess with them, right? I'm getting nuts with
yeah, I mean, I have. And all that stuff has my phone number and email on it, and it only does to encourage them. I get a laugh, and then I'll post that, but it's like, they said, are you interested in the attendees list? And I was like, you have the attendees? And they said, yes, we do. And I said, well, then attendees nuts. And then they, I think it's funny. Yes. Nobody else does. And then my wife rolls her eyes and she's like, baby, you're just going to get like 250,000 emails a day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but
I got a chuckle. I gave myself a little chuckle.
Oh, just a little chuckle.
But what is it on the other end of the line when they do call? What exactly are they? They're not real. We know it's fake, but what are they trying to get from us? Just our information and spam us to death, or what?
They want you to buy the list. They want you to buy they want you to get the attendees list. That's what they want. They want to try to sell it. They think we're suckers. So nobody's ever collected any emails from anyone, folks. It's all a scam.
Yeah, I wonder who these names actually are. There's no way anyone even signs in, so how would they get it?
Well, as long as somebody keeps buying them, as long as Oscar keeps pushing the PayPal button and buying those lists, they're going to keep asking. Little buddy.
Oh, man. Yeah, so 23 nights out there. It was brutal. I tell you, I don't know if I would do that again.
I was talking to a good buddy of mine here in Santa Fe, and I'm not going to say him by name because he ripped you. And I don't know. I don't have his permission yet.
He ripped me?
You tell your friend. Oh, yeah. He's like, you tell your friend Douglas that in order to do the cannonball run, you got to get the cannonball run.
Well, so, I'll tell you what. He can have the cannonball run next year for all I care. The drive wasn't terrible. I was so in my head about, oh my God, this is going to be a torturous 3 days. And then as we're doing it, I'm like, yeah, this is basically like driving home from any show. But some of those shows going far away from home, it doesn't always cover what you want from it. You really have to be strategic.
I don't have any idea what you mean. What are you trying to tell us there, Douglas?
I'm trying to say that at the end of it all, a couple of the shows barely made expenses. And that's not why we do this. So anyway.
No, that's brutal. I found an interesting one. I was on the other side of the coin for my last show. The universe had me better suited selling for my wife as opposed to exhibiting myself. That's how that works.
That's a good plus on that one, a good positive spin on it.
It's difficult to talk about doing a show as a +1. Honestly, there are so many people that do it that I love. I got a chance to see a couple of them out there on the road. Mm-hmm. I'm kind of good at it, but I did have to get a pep talk from Deb Adelson and Ayala.
Did you?
Were like, no, men sell jewelry better. You just have to tell the lady that they're pretty. And this is them saying, and I'm repeating what they said. Okay. This is not my own. This is not me being sexist. It's me repeating their pep talk to me. So they're like, yeah, it's easier for a man to kind of dress up and look nice and tell the women that they're pretty and put it on. And if you get the opportunity, if you're putting on a necklace, then put it on them. Hey, can I put that on for you? And you put it on, and 9 times out of 10, it doesn't come back off.
No.
So it was interesting to be on the other side. I did not catch a groove. I honestly, I wish I was selling for her again next week or something like that. Because, I always talk about like the burner show and learning how to talk to people. And it took me a couple of days. So I didn't really catch a groove and get out of my own head until Sunday. And then I was actually useful and had a couple of big sales there for her and earned my keep.
Okay.
And so it felt good. It felt really interesting to sell for somebody else. It's really easy to be a fan of somebody in their booth.
I have felt if I step in and then somebody will come into their booth and engage with the work, I feel like as the artist who is visiting, that you can say, isn't this work amazing? You look great with that, or whatever. You know what I mean? You can say stuff that the artists themselves can't say because it comes across as arrogant and conceited to say, isn't my work awesome?
Yeah. I can say, isn't this, look at this intricate piece. It's so badass. She's amazing. I can't walk and be like, I am amazing. Look at me. We certainly know some people that probably sell that way, but it doesn't work with my groove.
I was wondering when the burner show reference would ever come back. I felt like my two shows out in the, heading in the Pacific Northwest, they felt like burner shows. It felt like the spigot just got turned off. And it's such a bizarre feeling to be like, you get into a groove at your other shows where things are kind of flowing and things are good and you have a positive outlook about life. And then you'll go to a show that doesn't work for you. And it feels like, what happened? Who turned off the spigot? Did I forget to wear deodorant today? What is wrong? Why do I have this stink on me?
I suck now. No one likes me. It's just such a weird thing where you're like, and you'll make some new pieces in between your shows and you'll be like, if I had this 2 weeks ago, it wouldn't have been in my booth for 10 minutes and you're not even looking at it. Like, why? What's going on? It's a weird groove.
But then how do you keep yourself from getting into that spiral of like, I suck now. Nobody's going to want to buy my work. I'm not going to get into any shows next year. I've got to change my whole outlook on things. It's like, one or two shows can send us into that dark place. I know we've talked about that before. I remember last year you asked me how many shows before you start getting real down. And I was like, I was getting pretty dang down.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because you guys were on a 3-show run. Is that the longest run you've ever been on?
No, but it felt long.
Yeah. I used to do those big, long Florida runs where you'd go down and stay. Like I'll do the thing where I drive it and leave it. You drive it, you go down there, and then you leave your van, and then you fly home and kind of come back. A lot of times that's more worthwhile than doing one of these. God, I used to do that Coconut Grove. And then it's 2 weeks later, you've got Gasparilla. So I did Coconut Grove, and then I picked up that Key West show, which it's really good for some people. It didn't work for me. I found that a lot of times, talk about like, a lot of times what happens is that the artists just go down and party.
Okay, yeah.
And then by the end of the 4th or 5th day, they've been partying for so long, it's like, you guys realize alcohol is a depressant, right? and then all of a sudden there's just a lot of high drama on the open seas down there in Key West.
Well, you and I have talked about when other artists on the circuit start having issues with each other and it turns into like this drama. And you think, wouldn't it be nice to have an HR department in our industry? We can just send them to work it out themselves.
The breakups are happening, and there's been another art show breakup. Call in HR, and then HR can deal with the shows for you, so that you're not set up next to each other for the next 6 months of all the shows, and they can kind of move people around. That should be a box on Zap they can check. Right. Like, are you willing to move last minute to provide a safe space for an art show breakup? It is a nightmare for folks. And then you're set up next to them. You're like, how come these people are coming in the back door of the booth? Oh, that's right. They don't want to be seen by their neighbor.
Well, that's another example of how the spiral can get to you. Really so much of this business, it's such a different reality when we're out on the road at shows versus being solitary and home in our studios.
When you get back off the road, do you find yourself, are you immediately just like chomping at the bit, let's get back in the studio and roll?
Absolutely. Especially after, this particular run, But what makes it even longer is this time we turned off our furnace because it costs us like $1,000 a month to run that thing. And it's like, we're not even going to be home. What's the point? And I think I've said on the air before that it takes a full week for the thing to get up to temperature and filled up with hot glass. So this week has just been a period of kind of getting acclimated just to being back home and back in the routine. But
you finally cut the grass?
I cut the grass. Yes.
You finally cut the damn grass?
Finally. No mow May has turned into
back in.
Finally mow in September.
You got to set that thing to like 12 inches and just inch it back down.
There were critters in there, I think. It was crazy.
Yeah.
That's gross.
We had a lot of frogs I was chasing last time I mowed. It breaks my heart. I love frogs. And I was just going so slow and just watching them hop out of the way. I'm a big frog guy, Douglas. I like the frogs.
Frogs, yeah.
So yeah, that's always interesting. I mean, it's almost like a self-imposed break. And do you ever do this and like calculate paying somebody to do something or how long it's going to case? I mean, because I know the two of you can crank out more than $1,000 of artwork in a week or 4 or 5 days that it takes to heat back up. So
don't hate on the glass blowers, but we could make 4 $1,000 vases in a day.
You dirty dog.
I know.
I can't believe it.
I know. Isn't that insane? But it took us 30 years to be able to do it.
That's right. That's how long it took, folks. That's the answer. You know, in my whole career. Have you ever been honest, like with somebody? I remember doing Oklahoma City one time, and somebody came in. They're like, "How long did this take you?" And I was just like, "You're not buying this. You don't care." I'm like,
right.
What, this piece here? How long did that take you? It's amazing. How long did it take you? You know, and I give them my pat. I'm like, well, it's a full-time job. I never do one piece start to finish. Bark. And then they're like, well, no, seriously, how long did it take? Well, you know, it's my career's far. And I'm just doing the politicizing and saying, and just talking around the question, but he won't let it go. How long did it take you? I was like, 2 days. He's like, what? I was like, yeah, start to finish 2 days. I can knock one out. And he's like, are you serious? I'm like, oops. I let my honesty show. Took down my. I did.
I said it 20 minutes to somebody once because I knew they weren't interested. Move along, kind of thing. And they're like, I got to get into a different line of work.
God, I hate it. I was next to another artist at the last show, and they have a little alley between your booths. So really, those little alleys are great for the people to cut through, but they give everybody a double. But you're kind of sitting there hanging out. You better like your neighbor because you're kind of hanging out with them all weekend. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I remember doing St. Louis last time, and I was like, oh, man, I'm just going to hang out with Michael Cole all weekend, who I love.
Right.
And he's just an amazing, super chill Zen guy. Mm-hmm. And so got to do that. But we were just, I was so close to my neighbor that I could hear the dumb crap that people say to them. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, God, I'm so, like, I feel for you. Like, I feel it. I feel the pain of the other people's stupidity for you. Like,
this is
depths, you know, just like, like this is just that undercutting dumb thing. And I say all the time, it's like, wow, you're the hot person at the bar. They're just trying to say they like it. I'm like, no, sometimes they're just morons.
Sometimes they are. At first I thought where you were going with it was listening to the artist spiel all weekend, but now I understand it's the collectors' reactions, their lives,
or the non-collectors.
The non-collectors.
You know, something's $4,200, and they're just like, "Is this $420? I'll take it."
Yes, sir, it is.
Yeah, $42. I'll take 4. It's just, God. I'm like, if I could not hear that again, like, which one of my fingers could I cut off? Just which one? Which one do you want? You can't have my drawing finger. Yeah. You can't have my thumbs.
Yeah.
But I'd lose a pinky. Easily. Take it down. How'd you lose your pinky? I traded it. It was an even trade. I had a interesting thing post online. This is really funny because it made me remember, but Katie Harold and Jason Bruick, they posted on Instagram that their work, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. We're sitting here watching the show on Apple TV, Dark Matter. I can't remember the damn name of it. And I'm like, and we're like, we had this And it's this apartment in Chicago, and it has a bunch of their artwork. And I'm like, wait a minute. Let me check my email. Oh, yeah, I signed a release for that, too. My shit's in there as well. So,
really?
Yeah, I've got to go back and watch that. Have you had any interesting places your work has hung as far as that goes?
Yeah, we had a collector. It probably wasn't texting. It was a while ago. I can't remember how long ago it was. But they had sent us a message, an email or something, and said that they saw one of our vases on the background of like a shelf of like a CSI or something. And my first reaction was, yeah, right. Everyone always says, oh, your glass was here. This looks like that. And so then they sent us a screenshot, and I'll be damned if it wasn't one of our pieces. And I have no idea how it ended up there. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting.
Well, wait a second. Did you sign a release for it?
No release.
They owe you money, baby.
Do they?
Yeah, they do.
Well, then I'm going to be calling up Joan and Melissa Rivers. Remember back when they had that like a reality show, like a mother-daughter reality show thing?
I believe it, but no. Yeah, go ahead.
It was like a follow them around, and well, I'll be damned if we didn't see. And I know if for sure it was our work. It wasn't like it looks like our work. It was our work. So that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, seriously though, you could get paid. Here's a story, and I'm not going to name them by names. If you run into me at a show, I'll blab about it. But
okay,
again, we don't have permission. An art show artist pair that they've long since been retired, but they actually saw on the wall in the movie Titanic one of their pieces hanging in a major scene.
Really?
And from what I understand is that they retired off of the money that they got from that movie for them not getting permission. Yeah, so they got seriously paid.
I'm sure Melissa Rivers has quite a payout from her mother's career. I'm going to go seek that one out.
Go talk to Melissa. Yeah, I'm sure she'll get you. I got another one for you.
What's that?
I have a phone number in my phone. I do not have it assigned to any contact at all. I have no idea who this is. And the only contact I get from them is an occasional hardcore pornography still.
Really?
And you see something like that and you're like, what the, who's doing this? Block this number. And you look at the thing and it's like, well, also I'm really not into that. And you look and it's like, well, there's my artwork on the wall. And
as if that wasn't the first thing you saw when that picture came through.
It took me a second to focus. Like, what the hey? What's this? And then I'll ask them who it is, and they'll respond, ha ha ha, LOL, and they won't tell me who it is. So it's not like it's the same movie, but apparently they're into that stuff because
they saw it.
They sent me. Yeah, that's what they were looking at me like, hey, I recognize that guy, and they probably don't want me to know that they're looking at pornos. Or that they're into that. But so, yeah, thanks for the stills. I'm not going to be posting a link to that on my website anytime soon.
And yet he's not blocking the number, everyone. So
no, it's really funny. It cracks me up. Oh, man. Sorry about that, Mom, if you're listening. I didn't do it. I didn't search for it.
There you go.
How do we get out of porn, Douglas? How do we?
I think we have a whole other topic.
Porn?
We just
let's just cut that awkward pause and let's move on.
It's not a video podcast, so nobody can see how much I'm blushing right now. So
all it takes is. So that's why you didn't have a follow up to poor Keena Crow with her porno career. I was like, why didn't you have a follow up? How do you not have a follow up to you did costume designs for pornos?
I did.
I'm like, I want to hear more about that. Let's get Keena back in here.
I did have a follow up, and it was I didn't know there were costumes in pornos.
That was a good one. It's a good line. Season 1, folks.
All right.
Season 1.
This episode of the Independent Artist Podcast is brought to you by Zap, the digital application service where artists and art festivals connect.
Douglas, I'm thrilled this week that we are being sponsored and supported by Zapplication.org.
It's really great that they appreciate what we're doing here on the podcast.
And I appreciate what they are doing, basically because I feel like I'm an intensely lazy man. And they make the entire art show process, signing up for shows, a lot easier.
And they have that tagging feature for us. That way we can put little notes about a show to help us maybe with building that perfect tour.
Or you can write whatever you want on it. You can write, hey, this show sucked last year, but it had promise. It's going to be exactly what you need it to be, and I appreciate that extra bonus feature.
Hey, everybody, we've got an application announcement here to promote on the podcast this week, but you have to act quick. It's the Oklahoma City Festival of the Arts 2025. Now, you've heard us talk about the positive changes over there at the festival, and maybe you've been waiting to see how things go? Well, now's the time to act, as their ranking in the Sunshine Artist has jumped to number 23. Notable changes include this 59-year-old event has been a week-long festival and was recently condensed into 4 days and a preview. But it hasn't shrunk the art sales, which averages $1.8 million amongst 144 exhibitors. That's right, you can do the math there. In addition, the 4-hour preview last year garnered $100,000 as well. That's quite a kickoff. Now, those figures are facts because the festival processes art purchases through their central payment processor, so you don't have to mess around with the hassle of collecting sales tax. And there's no more sending customers away to a payment tent. Each booth is equipped with its own terminal. Now, Seth Lewis and his team, they work really hard by listening to what works and what doesn't work for the artists, and has proven to implement changes. And their top-notch hospitality is there to take care of you. Because with this show, when you make money, so does the festival. The show kicks off this spring in beautiful Bicentennial Park on April 23rd through 27th. The deadline is this week. It's September 22nd, so no more waiting around to apply. This show is one that you don't want to miss.
You know, talking about emerging artist programs, I've had one that I feel like I actually participated in because my sister-in-law was one of the emerging artists at Cherry Creek.
Oh, right.
I'm certainly not going to get through ranking them, but that's near and dear to my heart because they took such amazing care of her. My wife and I mentored her a little bit. She's an incredibly talented artist, like we've talked about before, but needed a lot of help, and that is exactly what they gave her. Not only that, but the Cherry Creek program they give you a grant for each of, there are only 5, only 5 emerging artists. And in order to kind of get your business off the ground, they give you a $5,000 grant.
Cool.
Pretty amazing to see that. They've got their own program, but talking about favorites, that'll always be mine just because of getting to see it firsthand from the inside and finding out how much of a difference it made to the artist. Mm-hmm. Like, not just because I've participated, you have too, in so many of these different programs.
Right.
And mentored so many different people at the shows. I've seen you do it. But to see firsthand and have, almost like the artist in-house and to see what a difference it made to them from the inside.
Right.
That one, just what Amy Curley and Tara Brickell do with that whole thing just really blew me away.
Cool. Yeah, and you get to see the other side of it too, knowing your sister-in-law so well and her art journey and seeing what that did for her, that's really, really awesome.
And that's the part that she needed the most help with. I mean, the artwork is fully realized. Mm-hmm. Just seeing it firsthand, it meant everything,
Awesome.
And the fact that we just were in St. Louis and you participated in the Emerging Artist Program too, that's a different kind of standard. It's kind of almost like the Stephen King, Des Moines, Coconut Grove, St. Louis. They have a similar way of doing it. That's also super effective. So if you want to talk on that, since you just had a little bit of experience there.
Totally. It was a great experience. I think it's a great program. I think if I were to do it all over again, I would have contributed in a different way.
Okay.
What Renee and I did this last time was we did like the mentoring in the booth, kind of like we were being shadowed as if we were like a waiter at Chili's or something. You know what I mean? We had ourselves a mentee who kind of followed us and was in the booth. And
Stewie's going to be following me today and learn how to upsell us some apps.
There you go.
Now, who's ready for some onion rings?
But one thing I did not really anticipate was just like how much I'm on everyone who walks in the booth, And it's really hard to have a conversation with a mentor. Is mentee even the right word? Am I making up a fucking word?
Yeah, probably. I don't know. We use it. We know what you're talking about. So rock on with your mentees.
My conversation with an emerging artist.
They're minty fresh.
It would break my flow to then be like, talk to a collector. And we all know as artists in booths next to each other, as soon as somebody walks in, boom, we're gone. We exit stage right.
That's exactly
And
right. Yeah.
I didn't want any of the people I was starting to talk to feel like, hey, I'm just shooting the shit with another friend in the booth, and I am all
Right.
about business when I'm there. And so,
Yeah.
anyway, I found that out about myself.
That's interesting.
I am with you, and I understand because with the St. Louis Emerging Artist Program, they will give you somebody who's there for a long stretch.
Yeah.
And you're in the booth. And I know what you mean, and I think this is what you mean, is that it's difficult when you are saddled with them for that long.
Mm-hmm.
And they are right there just up your ass for like 4 hours, just completely just right there on your elbow.
Yeah.
And it can be a little much. So it depends on the personality of the person.
Mm-hmm.
The Grove, Des Moines, St. Louis, a lot of people use this kind of thing. Cindy Lyric is involved or has been. It's got a lot of people that know what they're doing. And they do put this person with you. I mean, I remember being put with somebody at one of those shows that is like they were like a wrinkleless brain. Like they just were completely smooth. They didn't know anything.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, well, this is an art show.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, it just was difficult to completely invent the wheel with them.
Yeah.
And then the next time I had somebody, they were like a know-it-all, and they were telling me how to do things about halfway through, and I kind of was like, I don't want to be a jerk here, but I know a lot more than you. And do you want to listen and learn, or do you want to, because this is going to be over.
Kind of along the same lines as that, I felt like, let me just say before I go into this, I think it's a great program. It offers a lot of great things for the artists. I'm just saying that the in the booth sessions didn't work for me. And I think that all of like the sessions and the panel discussions and the seeing how vans are packed, I think that's incredible. And maybe other artists who don't have as much engagement going on with having to talk about every little thing, it might work for them. But I did feel like in one instance, similar to what you're saying about the know-it-all, is the person, one of the mentees we had, wanted to tell us all about their process of how they got to where they are and why they probably won't do art shows. And then I'm like, well, then why are we doing this?
Yeah, why are you wasting my time?
And possibly making me lose a sale. So I really think it is important to know what what their intentions are, if this really is the kind of life that they want to do, because it is hard. And it might end up being that a lot of these emerging artists go through the program just to find out this is too hard for me and save them the expense of buying the tent and buying all the stuff. So in that regard, it's good.
Well, I kind of have learned, and I've done this a number of times, and I will continue to do it. I do enjoy it. I have learned how to break out of the conversation with the artist into the conversation with the collector. And I've learned how to do that, but it's really more like WWSKD. What would Stephen King do?
Okay.
And it's like, have you ever been around him with the Emerging Artist Program and listened to the way he talks to them? It's like, it's very no nonsense. He's not at all a jerk. He's just very no nonsense, very cut and dry. And that's how I am with these folks. I'm like, hey, I'm here to sell. When I'm going into this talk, I need you to kind of listen, but give me room. I'm moving around the booth. I don't want you to be exactly here. I want you to just hear and listen. I'm going to introduce you too, so it's not awkward. And then we're just going to kind of talk about how things go. And if I can work you into the conversation, that's great. And if you feel like you are not part of it, you can fade out.
Sure.
And I've also been very much like when that kid who knew nothing and didn't have any interest and was way too far away, I was like, hey, Lonnie didn't work out. I told him to walk around the show, but I don't work for them. I'm giving my information and giving them as much as I can. But at the end of the day, it's my job, and they trust me to do the best for them, and I do.
Oh, okay. So you're saying it's not like the show gave us kind of like a curriculum to teach them. It's really just sharing, Is that
And when it's too much for the people that are in the booth, I've given them an assignment. I mean, like, okay, go out into the show. I want you to collect 3 artists out of the show. I want you to find somebody that is like kind of your hero in the show that could be maybe somebody you've seen before, maybe somebody that blows you away. Go find somebody that blows you away that you think you could aspire to be. You know, we're not copying art, but as far as their display and their presentation and what they're offering the art show world, what you could aspire to be, you know, like, who could I never be? You know, like, oh man, I could never be Joachim Neal. I could never be him. He's oh, holy crap.
Yeah.
I could maybe, you know, I could aspire to be this person and even go out. And this is where you get to that, like that Clifton Henry kind of thing, where he went to, I think he was saying maybe the Bucktown show in Chicago area. And he saw some photographers. He's like, man, I'm better than this. Go find somebody that you think you're better than.
Right.
You know, and you may not find them.
Right.
And that's okay. I couldn't find anybody that I'm better in. Okay, that's great. And that kind of cuts it loose a little bit where you can go back in. I'm like 9 times out of 10, it's like one of them came back that was a photographer they were talking about. And they were like, okay, well, my person is this person. I'm like, well, I know them. Let's go talk to them.
Right.
And they're like, oh, you know, and it's like,
good.
okay, let's go introduce ourselves. Let's go do this. And so engaging them in a different way. And that's one of the ways that I found that I can talk to those emerging artists and not have them in my space forever.
Right.
And it also really helps them out.
Well, you're a better professor than I am, sir.
I don't know about that.
The whole time I kept thinking, as I would fall into podcast mode and I'd be starting to tell them conversations that we had on the podcast. And I'm thinking, listen to the podcast. You're going to get a lot of good information like that.
I did have somebody that came by. They were talking about the show and they were like, I raised my hand and you guys have to listen to the Independent Artist podcast. Steven was like, are they paying you for this? Like, that's a hell of a plug.
That's true. Send them all in there.
Nope. No money is exchanged hands, folks.
Quick segue into that. I don't know about you, but the last run out there, I've talked to a lot of people who've come to my booth to introduce themselves. And a lot of love came our way for what we're working on here, Will. So it was pretty nice. It was pretty nice to hear some people's stories about what the show means to them. And it was good to hear because, yeah, with all of the shows and trying to do this as for a living as artists, our little hobby can sometimes take its toll on our workload. So it's good to know that people are out there listening and they're enjoying the conversation. So thanks for that.
For sure. Yeah, I can't believe that I've carved an hour out here or 2 hours here to talk with you just because I have so much going on. I'm getting ready to go out on my own run.
What are you up to?
I'm headed off to Plaza. I'll leave next Thursday. It's a Friday morning setup and it's 12 hours away. So I can get like 8 hours in and then, or 9 hours in, I guess, and then wake up super early and get there for the last stretch. I'll stop in Wichita. I don't know. I've lived out here in Santa Fe long enough that I've started to figure out like, that was the hardest part, was like living my entire life and doing 20 years of shows in the exact same place in Richmond, Virginia, and knowing where my stops are, knowing where the clean, cheap hotels are that you can get last minute, knowing where a good bite to eat is. I didn't know anything. I was just a baby.
Just a baby.
And so I didn't know anything. So now I'm figuring out how to do the shows that I like and where to stop.
That's good.
And all that stuff. So
yeah, I remember I did that too when I was out in Portland. I asked some of the people who regularly do the Cannonball Run, where are kind of your benchmarks? And that was huge. It was helpful to kind of know when you make a new run, where those good stops are, you know, where you have a bigger city that might have decent hotels as opposed to the middle of nowhere.
The Cannonball Run, for those who do not know, is when you are accepted to the Art and the Pearl show in Portland, Oregon, that ends on Labor Day and
this
Monday
is not a plug.
of Labor Day, and then goes directly into the St. Louis Art Fair in Clayton, Missouri. The Cannonball Run is 12 hours average per day of driving. And is that about it? 10, 12 hours a day? Is
I'd
that right?
say, yeah, that sounds about right. Maybe a little longer.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's helpful to be able to switch off for sure.
Are you, do you guys got to get out and stretch? You're not a young man anymore. You got to get out and stretch and make sure you didn't get a blood clot in your leg.
Yeah, we do. We do try and set up those switches so that we'll do like 2-hour shifts. And if you have to drive
2 hours.
Yeah. So that keeps us pretty on track so that, you know, you can do 2 hours easily and then take a 2-hour nap and then switch. And then you've had like 2 or 3 shifts of driving for the day and man, your day is done. have a navigator, have two people in the car. To try and do a 12, 14-hour day on your own is brutal.
Yeah, it is brutal. And that's what I'm looking at here. Anyway, so I've got my own little run. I'll be doing Plaza into all the way back to the East Coast and going to Armonk.
Oh, you are?
That's
cool.
Yeah, going back to that one. I haven't been back since I lived on the East Coast, so it's been since pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And have some collectors out there, so I'm excited about going.
So I've had a lot of time to think, with being on the road and not having the results I wanted. And, it sometimes makes me think about the shows and how we kind of have a different kind of like yardstick on how we will judge them by, like distance or who's putting it on or what your results have been there in the past. And there's some times where we'll maybe do a show a few years in a row and say, well, I had a good show back in 2017 there. I'm going back because I think that I'm going to return to those glory days. And then it just doesn't happen year after year. And you're like, why am I holding on to this? You know what I mean? Why am I still giving this a chance?
I typically, I'll look at a show in a different way. I'll be like, look, here's one where I go to the show, I'm having all these amazing conversations and it's going, and then I'm, every few hours I'm selling a nice piece, but I'm not closing all of the deals. People are still, I'm building. I'm doing this. I'm in the middle of moving. I'm getting ready to buy a home. And those are all amazing conversations. Hopefully you're out there collecting their information so that you can keep them on an email list and stay in touch and make sure they're following you on social media and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And you're out there and you're working your butt off. And like, that's one show. And it's like, okay, well, sometimes I have those shows and I only close one piece. And I'm like, okay, well, that was way not my mark, but I'm going to go back because it seems like that show has legs. It's going to keep growing.
Right.
Whereas sometimes I've gone to a show where I didn't have any interesting conversations and it was a drag to get through. And then one person finally comes in and they're like, let me buy those two pieces. And those two huge paintings that they just bought definitely had me crush my goal for the show.
Saved your ass.
But I'm not going back.
Yeah.
Because I think I just sold to the one person that was interested in me. And now they're on my email list and I'm not going to be like, hey, Jimmy, you get first dibs on the next collection as I drop. I'll send you an email with all these new pieces if you're interested. Oh, sure, that's great. Now I don't have to go back. So
I've heard other artists refer to that as like, you'll say, how was your show? And they feel like, I got lucky because it was like you described, a lot of nothing and then out of the blue something. And you're like, there's not more there for me. So that's what the lucky mean. That lucky, I got lucky line means.
Yeah. Whereas some of these shows that seem a little smaller, that are a little less known, sometimes I'll just keep going back and back and back because the community is growing and the interest is high. And that's why I know certain artists that keep going back to what I would think of as really tiny shows that I'm like, hey, that's good for you. You've developed that. And I'll try to glom onto it. And I'm like, well, they don't care about me. They care about you. This is a Daryl show. This ain't a Will show.
Well, one of the things that we benefit from, if you try and look at the positive, when you maybe have a slower show, is you have an opportunity to bond with the community. You get to bond with our friends, with the other artists out there. And so, I mean, the takeaway from that is good, because we don't live in a neighborhood with a bunch of artists who we love to have conversations with, who kind of get us and we get them. And so that aspect of it was such a treat to talk to Anthony Hansen and have him be my neighbor the whole weekend. And, or any of the people that Sunday and Brad were next to us in St. Louis and, John Herman and people. Sally. Just really great, really great times.
That's awesome. I made it all the way to your booth and I didn't get a chance to say hey to Sunday and Brad. They will always have just a huge place in my heart. They showed up at a show where after I blew my Achilles and
I remember
helped me load completely out, loaded my booth. I had a double booth at the time and Susie's booth. And I was like, they were just the kindest people. And they were like, I was like, can I buy you dinner? Can I do this? Whatever. And they were like, nope, pay it forward. I'm like,
love it.
So I try whenever I can, man, to do that.
Just in this last year, I've heard of a number of artists who've had health issues on the road. You know, something happened actually at the show that they ended up in the emergency room. And the way that other artists, neighbors, friends rally, you know, we had a guest on the show, Tom Wargen, and he had a health issue. He was there with his kids who were helping him, adult children, and they ran the show, but other artists helped load him up. And while he was recovering in the hospital, you know, so it's just a really great community we have out there that just band together and help each other out. So that's really cool.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah. The exact same show, like 200 feet down the row, and they had a really nasty fall.
Oh.
And it was, you know, a beloved member of the community. And I was like, you know, my wife had called. She was like, hey, can you run down here and help? And I was like, middle of helping her sister load out. And we had like a million things, and they were all kind of falling in on each other, and we're trying to load her out. I was like, I can come, but it's going to be like an hour. And it was just, I knew exactly who to call. And I called Michael Schwegman, and I was like, hey, can you run up to booth so-and-so if you're done? And because we were going to meet for dinner later, and I was like, can you, and he's like, on it. And he just goes and listened to her husband and like how learned how to do it and loaded this person out. And it was just like, I don't know, we can lean on each other when we have to. And it's, you know, something happens, and it's just a matter of kindness, but it's also know-how. Like, you and I have been doing this long enough that I know how to load a van.
Right.
If you tell me the 3 things that I need to do, like if you're even sitting in a chair and it's like, okay, take out all these connectors, and you're like, okay, I know how to do this shit.
Yeah.
I can get that done. I know how. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a good community. It's good to be part of the community, but
It's funny. I think about a time where somebody was helping me out. Bless their heart. Love them. They're really dear friends. But when, you know, even amongst artists, we do things differently. And when I take my trim line down, I leave all the connectors on and where I want them so that when I put it together, it goes a little bit faster.
all right.
Well, these people were the type of artists who they take every single connector apart and off. And so, again, I'm not criticizing, because it was a really nice gift that they helped me out. But then I was like, okay, now I'm starting over. You know what I mean? I got to find that little one that does for the awning bracket, and then this one, and then that one.
Right, man. Or you get out there and help the Radkes and dump an entire container of their
Who did that?
beloved objects
Who
onto
did
the
that?
ground.
Who did?
You could try to help that way, Douglas.
Okay. I guess we got to enlighten the people, let them know what we're talking about. I was helping Road Mom and Road Pa last people on the road, you know, to break down that night. They were struggling to get everything together. And I'm used to carrying bins of glass, which weigh something, and bins of gourds weigh nothing. And I gave it just a little tiny push to get something else behind it, and I dumped the entire bin of their beautiful artwork out onto the street. And I lost it. I felt so shitty. I wanted to help, and I actually made it worse. I break things.
Yeah. Way to go. And I didn't mean to make you feel bad.
So a topic I wanted to switch to here. So we kind of were talking about this last episode when we were doing a promo for one of the winter shows. It got cut because I had said, it's exciting. We're starting to plan our next season. And you're like, is it? Is it really? And I have literally been procrastinating getting these applications out for next year because I don't want to do it yet. I don't want to apply.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know what I want to do. I have to like shit or get off the pot. I don't know. Do you ever have that with thinking about kind of starting the whole year over again?
Yeah, I do that typically. I've been doing that a lot lately, and doing, it's like a lot of applications are due here by the end of the month, and I've started a bunch of them. And I know they extended the deadline for applying to, so David Bjerstrom loves this when they do that. He's like, oh, goody. When shows expand their deadlines. But Gasparilla I just got it in, I got it in like 4 hours before it was like, oh shit, do I want to? Yeah. So I applied to that, and I felt like it was super late, and I guess it's not late anymore. I opened it on back up, but yeah, I've been procrastinating that too. I haven't gotten any of my applications in. With me, it always has something to do with more, I'm going to do something so great, and I'm going to put a new application in. And then, I always think that I'm going to have a new body of work that I'm going to shoot. and get in, but I'm not going to do that. Just going to.
Yeah.
I mean, I did get some new ones in there. There's some new stuff.
That's exactly where I'm at. It's like I haven't had time to actually photograph some new stuff, and to get it up and ready. So even like a direction, like if things are going to change for next year, if I want to do I want to be in California next winter? Do I want to be in Florida? Or there's a new opportunity that I've heard about down in Arizona. There's like this month-long or 2-month-long show. It sounds kind of interesting, So it's like kind of having to pick a lane and choose where I want to be.
Yeah, I'm not excited about next year. There's a lot of going on, a lot of family stuff, and I'm just kind of, I don't know. It's gonna be hard. It's always hard this time of year, anyway.
It is. It's like we're still trying to finish this part, and to start thinking about next year it's not all just redoing what we did the last time, and not even knowing if we're going to get into what we want to get into. So it's all just a mass of unknowns.
Yeah, plus I'm not, I'm extending this year somehow. I'm doing shows later in the year. And so it doesn't really feel like an end to it. It's going to be like just a nonstop barrage of just shows and road trips and all of this stuff. It's just going to be more challenging.
But do you think if when you get to the end of this year with what you've all signed up for, that maybe you won't need to go do the winter shows and stay home and work? Or are you thinking you are still going to need to go down the route of doing Florida or other shows?
How do I know?
How do
you know? How would I know? I can't tell. Election year. It's coming down the pike, and it's, I don't care who you are, it's always going to be challenging. And I typically find that people are more reticent to make those big purchases. So knock on thick wooden head and see how it goes.
Yeah.
Hey, while we're still talking about St. Louis, boy, were there any questions, if you had to do it all over again, that you might want to ask Sarah Umlauf?
Oh, right. I mean, who knew that we would have that talk with her, and then it was like social media would blow up for her. I mean, that was insane. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really unfortunate, and there definitely were some questions that we could have asked that could have maybe clarified the situation a little bit, but
we didn't
apparently,
know about
it. The situation apparently, and I'm just going to go by, I'll repeat what they said and what the show has said in their bottom line, and there's no reason not to
take a stance on any issues or anything.
Yeah, I'm not going to take any stance. It's just like they had a group that had applied, a Palestinian dance group that had applied to do the show. They did not get a contract to do the show, and they acted like they were silenced as opposed to of not being, I don't know, just there was a big rigmarole. Is that kind of how you see it? Like,
the thing I know is that we both know Sarah really well, and we know she's a kind, generous person who, wants to hear from everybody. But she also has a big show with lots of cogs in the wheel that she has to run. So personally, I don't know all the details. I want to give her the benefit of the doubt that her heart and her mind was in the right place. And we have talked about this ourselves doing this podcast. And sometimes when we've had artists on as guests, everyone is so afraid of getting canceled nowadays. And when I talked to her at St. Louis, she's like, her staff is like, who would have ever thought you to be the one who's getting canceled here in this moment? It's like,
if you haven't been canceled, you haven't arrived. But
there you go.
The Palestinian, I don't know if they walked up your street or not, but they walked down ours and did a peaceful march. Just raising awareness for what's going on in Gaza. And I didn't honestly feel like there was anything wrong with what they did to demonstrate.
No, right.
I don't think that the show did anything wrong necessarily either. So, that's all we're really saying is it existed.
Yeah.
I'll say this. I had a member of the board of directors in our booth who was a friend of my wife's and a collector of her work, and she was talking about it, and she was upset about the march, and it was like, it's peaceful and it's fairly quiet. And she was like, her point though, she was upset because she was like, they don't have any idea what goes into putting on a show, all of the different hoops that you have to jump through as a community. They don't have any idea. And it's like, okay, well, I hear you. I also hear the fact that there's something horrifying going on in
the world.
in the world. And, let's think about it. It's okay. And
the
we
genocide
are
of people is wrong and hurtful and hard, and it brings a lot of hard feelings. Sometimes what's happening in the world overshadows events or what's going on in like our bubble of art shows. So it kind of came to a head in that situation.
And it was peaceful, and it was kind of powerful, and it did make a number of people think for a few seconds, and I think that's fine.
That's great.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
What else do we have here on the docket, Douglas?
Well, I wanted to say another thing that happened that's been on Renee and my mind is I've talked a lot on the show about having adult children and, raising children on the road. And, so Renee and I have been kind of in a transition ourselves with our next chapter in our lives. And one of the things that we felt really strongly about is kind of like renewing our commitment to each other and what does our relationship look like going forward. And one of the things we wanted to do for ourselves is we wanted to get new wedding rings.
Huh.
And the perfect place to do that is amongst our artist communities because we have so many friends who we just love their work. So at St. Louis, I had the opportunity to go chat with a guest of the show and a good friend of ours, Matthew Nafsker. And
cool.
It's so awesome. I have a new wedding ring on my finger that made by Matthew Nafsker, and I'm so happy about it. And Renee is in the process of getting a piece made that was designed by Carol Greiwe, one of our last guests. So it's so cool that we're going to, when we started our relationship in the art world, we didn't know where it was going to go with doing art shows and meeting artists. And we kind of went with rings that you go to a jewelry store and you buy. But now this has a whole new meaning for us to have something made by artists that we know and love. So
that's really cool.
I want to thank those guys for helping us with that.
I think this is funny. When I chose my engagement ring or the engagement ring for Susan, I chose to go in the opposite route because I didn't go to a jewelry store, but I chose a designer that nobody knew that was not actually on the circuit because I don't trust you people out there. I didn't know. Who knows? It's like I didn't know whether I was going to get next to somebody that I thought I really liked, and then all of a sudden there's an awning up right in the middle of my display. And no, seriously though, you never know, and it's good. Yeah. But that's a safe bet. There's Carol Greiwe and Matthew Nafsker are not going to suddenly break that and make you change your opinion about your ring that's on your finger.
But what I also think is cool about that, what you were saying is, how do you buy a piece of jewelry for a jewelry artist? I mean, come on, that's got to be tough.
It was, but I think I did a lot of talking and I did a lot of listening and I did a lot of we did some hey, what do you like? What's this guy? I did some internet stalking, some deep dives on what is she liking of other jewelry designers that are in this way. So there were Easter eggs along the way that I picked up.
Good. So, that was cool. And then the other thing that made me think about that was, having our kids grow up on the road like that is my daughter, who's now 28. Her friend, who she was roommates with, moved into Minneapolis and she went to visit her. And right outside her building was the Loring Art Fair just a few weeks ago. And so that's something her and her friend went to do, is walk the art show. And Eva was feeling so mature. I grew up in this world.
Right.
And she knew a lot of these people. So she walks into Ty Teoli's booth and she's like, I know this work. My dad had him on the podcast. And so she started a conversation with him.
Oh, cool.
And she kind of felt a little bit like celebrity adjacent in a way. You know what I mean? Because Ty knew who she was. And her friend bought some new pieces to hang in her apartment from Ty. So anyway, it's kind of a cool situation there.
That is great. And I have not seen that guy in a while. I hope to run into him. We've been communicating a little bit through online, but haven't seen him in a while. I do love that thing. I grew up in going to art shows, and my parents were not art show artists. They just are big collectors of American craft. The kind of thing that they like is different than what I do, and it's not, but it's funny. They like going to like Crozet in Virginia or Long's Park, in Pennsylvania. They
Yeah.
enjoy going to that show, and they really enjoy going around and, my mother introducing herself. Do you know who Will Armstrong is? And there's I was talking
that guy.
yeah, right.
That guy.
You're like, ooh, God, they're so sweet though. They don't come to any of the shows that I do. They just like doing the shows that they like doing, and I'm like, Armand, it's just about as far away as Long's Park for you. You could come say hi to your son.
Yeah,
but
they're like,
well.
you can come to us.
That's right. It's time for a visit.
Okay. Hey, have you ever had this experience, Will? So, there's a lot that goes into planning and doing shows. And sometimes we have to drive quite a distance. And you're sitting in your van, you're waiting to load in. What's that?
This sounds like an ad.
It's an ad.
Does this ever happen to you, Will?
Yeah.
Like, oh, God.
Do you get irregularity?
Constipation, yeah.
And they line you up, and they pull you in, and you pull right up to your booth, and you're about ready to start unloading. And you go, I've driven all this way.
Right.
I actually had a situation where I considered, okay, well, I guess I'll just drive home now.
Yeah. Yeah, where you just like, this might be it. I might be done. Yeah, okay. I've done that. I sat in front of my booth. It was supposed to be just the worst weather. Just the worst weather. Mm-hmm. And the show was about not too far. It's like 7 hours away from home, and it's significant, but not so far
not like
that I
3 days.
Right. Yeah. Not like everything is out here. So I'm looking at that, and I'm like, we sat there, and they were like, we were in front of our booth, and we kept having people come, are you going to start setting up? You have an hour to unload. I'm like, I know I have an hour to unload. We're talking. Leave me alone. And we talked about, we used about 20 minutes of our hour to discuss whether or not it was worth risking all of our work. And I've definitely done it, but I did end up doing that show, but whatever.
Yeah, you do have that moment where you have to consider, is it worth it?
Right.
Like, to make the hard decision, even though I put all of this into it. I think we've been in this business long enough that we know that not every situation is going to work out right, and if you feel like it's a storm or there's danger to your body or your work or whatever, you have to weigh the pros and the cons. And then sometimes you say, fuck it, I'll try. Or you go, no, not going to do it. I'm just not.
It's really interesting. Yeah. You also have to check yourself sometimes too. And you think about you and me, how long we've been doing this, you and Renee, how long we've been doing these art shows and what we do for a living. And then you kind of I got gut checked a little bit this past weekend where I met somebody who had never gotten into this show before, and it was their first time, and they were so happy and they were so full of optimism for the weekend. Mm-hmm. And then I was talking to somebody else at the show, and they're kind of at seemingly more at the end of their career as opposed to the beginning, and to talk to different artists like that who were just such sore assholes about the show and just like, I don't want to deal with this and this. And they just were so angry about everything about it. And I'm like, man, I want to go back over there and try to soak up some of the energy of those guys that just got in.
Yeah.
That just are kind of like, it just, how about the gratitude, just try to enjoy. And it's hard. It's really hard, but to take it for granted is a little, let's try not to. Let's try to have a little gratitude and think about who maybe would prefer to have your space if you're going to be that grumpy about it.
One of our deliveries that we made kind of falls in line with that. And they were telling us a story about walking the show and shopping in other booths and stuff that they liked. And they said they were thinking of making a purchase from an artist. They really bonded with their work. But the artist seemed like a bitter old crank, kind of like what you just described.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't want to live with that.
Right.
I don't want that. I mean, they just had such an awful attitude. They just killed it. Totally.
Yep.
So,
it happens.
It happens.
And if you, get out of your headspace and try to think about, I don't know, what do you do? What do you
think about daisies and flowers and
I don't know. Think about
I don't know, whatever.
How lucky you are.
Oh, and in line with that, so this collector was also saying to me that they were asking an artist if they were having a good show. And the artist was very honest with them. And they said, no, I'm not having a good show. And I'm thinking, why would they do that?
Yep.
Collectors, the answer to are you having a good show is, Will, come on. What do we say?
Always yes.
Always
yes.
Always.
I never even say no in my booth, Douglas.
Right.
Are you having a good show? Yeah. This is, have you, and then they'll try to follow up and be like, are you having a good show? And I haven't sold anything yet. And I'm like, hey, yeah, this is always a great market for me. Yeah. Oh, really? That's great. Have you sold some things? And I'm like, why are you digging? Why are you picking the scab, buddy? Totally. What do you want to know from me? I'm trying to say yes without lying to you, but I'm going to go ahead and lie. You're trying to be a politician. You're trying to like get out of it without giving a real answer, but they're forcing your hand. No, seriously, what have you sold? I'm like, no, seriously, Beat Street, get out of here. Oh man. So yeah, that's funny. That I've told that story before about being next to that guy who's like, somebody wanted to buy his biggest piece and they're like, oh man, I love it. I'm going to put it in my beach house. You're like, have you had a good show? Well, no. In fact, if you buy this, it'll be my first sale of the weekend. He's like, oh. People don't want to buy from losers.
No.
They don't.
No.
They don't want to buy from losers. They want to buy from winners.
Right.
No coffee for you. Coffee's for closers.
But if an artist actually, like a friend, will you be honest about it, or will you say, yes, I'm having a great show in that situation?
A real friend?
Real friend. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Honest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You've given me the look. You've given me the wide eyes and the, I don't know what's happening here, Douglas. What's going on?
Yeah. Why am I invisible here? I feel like sometimes I feel like Sixth Sense, like, am I dead? Am I a ghost? Am I just still doing this shit?
Right.
Am I a streak on the highway back there? and I still, like, my ghost continued to just come and do the show. You're like, why is somebody else in my space? And then you set up inside of it. Just no one can see me.
You're Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis in Beetlejuice, my friend.
Yeah, or freaking Groundhog Day, except I'm dead.
Oh my God, I cannot wait to see Beetlejuice 2. It's like one of my all-time favorite movies, and Renee and I have plans to go see that tonight, so I'm looking forward to it.
I've been saying Hugga-Dugga my entire life because of Beetlejuice.
Hugga-Dugga.
Yeah, my entire life.
Not gonna lie, if Michael Keaton ever retires and when they make Beetlejuice 3, I think you're the man there.
All right. Have you seen, I saw a meme going around with Pete Anderson. You know who he is, a SNL guy?
Which one is he? I'm trying to remember.
He's the guy that hooks up with all the ladies. Pete Anderson looks like Davidson.
Davidson, yes. Who it is. Okay.
Yeah, Pete Davidson. The meme is Pete Davidson looks like Beetlejuice before he died. Like he really does if you look like him. It's a great origin story. And he's funny enough.
Yeah.
For
sure.
If they could write the script.
Yeah.
There you go, Tim Burton.
Then you have Beetlejuice.
Yeah, exactly.
I do feel invisible sometimes, but never to customers.
No.
Always lie. Always lie. There's
That's
your
right.
lesson for the week.
That's a good way to wrap up this conversation is if you can't say something nice, then lie. Lie about it.
Just lie. Lie to everyone. My wife will hate this episode.
Well, I think I have a couple of cats and dogs I need to round up. I'm feeling a little hungry here. So,
get out there. Do it. That's honestly the most idiotic racist thing I've heard in a long time. All right. Oh, man. No. That's for our Patreon, Douglas. That's
right. That's
keep our political views for our special listeners.
Okay.
Is there any interest in that? Do you want to hear the outtakes? Do you people?
Yeah, right.
I don't know. More work for you, Douglas.
More work, but how about merch? We've got
Do
merch.
you?
We got
engage on our Facebook page there and let us know if you want some merch. We could print you up some badges, posters, stickers, and T-shirts.
There you go.
All right, buddy. We'll see you next time.
Okay.
Good luck out there on the road. I might be recording with you from a hotel room sometime soon.
All right. Sounds good. I will talk to you later and have good shows.
Thanks. You too.
This podcast is brought to you by the National Association of Independent Artists. The website is naiaartists.org.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. That's zapplication.org. And while you're at it, find us on social media and engage in these conversations.
Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to be notified when we release new episodes.
Oh, and if you like the show, we'd love it if you would give us your 5-star rating and offer up your most creative review on your podcast streaming service. See you next time.